Some TV shows get hyped up as the next big thing, only to fall flat on their face with critics and viewers. These are some of the more embarrassing examples. When the series that would eventually be released as The Idol was first announced in 2021, it felt like a merging of the worlds of music and television, starring pop star Abel Tesfaye, aka The Weeknd, and co-created with Sam Levinson of Euphoria fame. There was every reason to be excited about the prospects of the show. It followed Tesfaye as nightclub owner and cult leader Ted Rose, who was trying to resurrect the career of struggling pop star Jocelyn. In the 2 years that passed between the announcement of The Idol and its 2023 debut on HBO, lots of creative strife went on behind the scenes. Actors and other creative figures came and went, and the show got at least one major retooling. Still, hopes were high that The Idol would follow in the footsteps of other acclaimed musician-led shows like Atlanta and Dave. Ultimately, it was not to be. The Idol launched to extremely harsh reviews, resulting in a very weak 19% on Rotten Tomatoes. It was deemed so bad it even threatened to ruin Season 3 of Euphoria and was cancelled after a single 5-episode season, one episode short of the 6 that were originally planned. The Marvel Cinematic Universe was still firing on all cylinders in 2017, building up to the epic climax of Phase 3 over the following 2 years. On the small screen, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was still going strong with its transition between its 4th and 5th seasons, and Agent Carter had been well received, even if it wasn't a ratings juggernaut. But then a third Marvel television show entered the fray, with a hype boost on a level rivaled by a few shows before or since. In a history-making move, Inhumans was revealed to be making its world premiere not on television, but in theaters on IMAX screens. The first time ever that a live-action TV show debuted this way. Having not just its pilot but its first 2 episodes premiere on IMAX seemed to speak highly of Disney's faith in the quality and scale of the new show. Financially, the costly experiment didn't pay off, as the episodes only grossed $3.5 million total from its IMAX gambit. It didn't help that the show itself wasn't very good, scoring only 11% on Rotten Tomatoes, still the lowest score of any MCU product released to date.
It's your arrogance that has destroyed you.
The series only lasted 8 episodes. Inhumans was largely buried by Marvel Studios and remains one of the biggest flops of the Marvel franchise. Kurt Sutter was instrumental in helping to establish FX as a reliable provider of hit original dramas. First, he was a writer across all 7 seasons of The Shield, which put FX on the map. After that, he created the series Sons of Anarchy, another big hit for the network that ran for 7 seasons. As Sons of Anarchy was winding down, FX had nothing but faith in whatever Sutter did next, and was willing to spend whatever was necessary to get another Sutter-sized hit. Apparently, Sutter wanted to do an epic historical drama series about an executioner in early 14th century Wales.
I need a man with the heart of a dragon.
The allure of a medieval drama on par with Game of Thrones was too much for FX to resist, so the network went ahead and ordered 10 episodes of The Bastard Executioner, with the per-episode budget nearly doubling that of Sons of Anarchy. Again, FX was being big on both the show and on Sutter. Reviews for The Bastard Executioner were soft, with the general consensus being that the show was more concerned with being violent for the sake of violence than actually telling a compelling story. As for ratings, FX and Sutter both mutually decided to cut their losses and not bother with a second season. Instead, Sutter returned to the Sons of Anarchy universe with the spin-off Mayans MC, which lasted 5 seasons. By the 2010s, cable series like Game of Thrones, Breaking Bad, The Walking Dead, and Mad Men marked the new standard for so-called prestige television, leaving traditional networks scrambling to catch up. With the rise of cable, NBC lost the crown it had earned from shows like ER and Law & Order. Network brass decided to try and beat cable at its own game, launching what it hoped to be the same kind of attention-grabbing, sexy, edgy awards bait that cable channels had been excelling at. The Playboy Club debuted in the fall of 2011 and seemed to imply a show that would push the boundaries of what primetime network television typically allowed. On the contrary, critics pointed out that the show did anything but, and most agreed that it would have been better off on cable. The tameness of the show would have been a lot more forgivable had it actually been good, but the 21% on Rotten Tomatoes suggests otherwise. Dreadful ratings coupled with backlash and protests over the content led to NBC pulling the plug on the Playboy Club after airing only 3 episodes. These days, nobody bats an eye when something that was previously only an internet thing becomes a mainstream product. But in 2010, that sort of thing was still very much a novelty, which made the announcement of a television show based on a popular Twitter account feel like a trailblazing moment. The fact that the TV version, my dad says, starred William Shatner as the aging man prone to making inappropriate and off-color statements lent it further perceived legitimacy.
I know what tweeting is. I've got tweeters. I tweet and I've taken a hold of my tweeting.
A lot was riding on what was seen as new ground for material to base television shows on, and CBS gave it a promising spot in its Thursday night programming block between The Big Bang Theory and CSI. Even sandwiched between two ratings juggernauts, My Dad Says did so poorly that it didn't even get a full season. It was pulled the following February after airing only 18 episodes. My Dad Says holds the unfortunate distinction of having a 0% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Boasting what was at the time the biggest single prize ever awarded in game show history, $2 million, the million-second quiz was definitely an event. It unfolded in real time over 1 million seconds, or 11 days, 13 hours, 46 minutes, and 40 seconds, an hour of which aired live each night on NBC, with much more available to watch on NBC's website and app. It was definitely an ambitious multimedia undertaking. A bit too ambitious, perhaps, because technical glitches plagued the app in the show's first few days. This wasn't an insignificant issue, as viewers playing along on the app were promised a chance to be flown out to New York to join the actual live competition. That didn't do much to keep the audience interested in the show, nor did the overly complicated premise and rules. Ratings didn't start particularly strong and only fell as the show went on. It's unclear whether NBC intended for the million-second quiz to have a future, but those first million seconds are all we ever got. Hugh Jackman quickly became a movie star after bringing Wolverine to the big screen for the first time in 2000's X-Men, and although he eventually merged his screen acting and musical theater talents successfully in hit movies like Les Miserables and The Greatest Showman, that wouldn't happen until the 2010s. Before that, his attempt to show his musical side on television failed spectacularly. In 2007, CBS greenlit a very expensive series adapting the BBC musical serial Blackpool, changing the title to Viva Laughlin and moving the setting from the coast of England to the deserts of Nevada. That Viva Laughlin was cancelled after airing only 2 episodes tells you all you need to know about how well it was received. The New York Times suggested it not only was the worst news show of that season, but was a contender for worst show of all time.
You play golf? No. Well, I do.
6 additional episodes were produced but never aired, and given that they've yet to surface 15 plus years later, they are considered to be permanently lost. When Blockbuster Video filed for bankruptcy in 2010, the world felt wistful but largely indifferent. After all, everyone loved Netflix's cheaper, more flexible, and late fee-free DVDs by mail service. But as these things go, the generation that grew up renting movies and games from Blockbuster started to get really nostalgic about it as time went on. Further fanning the flames of this retrospective love is that public opinion on Netflix and the other streaming services had begun to sour going into the 2020s. Price hikes, content purges, and simply too many options had people longing for simpler times. All this came together to set the stage for a workplace comedy set in a Blockbuster store, seemingly the perfect place to set a comedy and at the exact right time to do so. The cast was impressive too, with sitcom stars Randall Park and Melissa Fumero. But perfect timing, a nostalgia premise, and a strong cast don't mean a thing if the show itself is nothing special, and Blockbuster ended up with an unremarkable 23% on Rotten Tomatoes. Netflix, which ironically produced and distributed the show, announced that Blockbuster wouldn't get a second season just a month after launching the first. The news prompted the AV Club to say exactly what everyone was thinking. Netflix killed Blockbuster again.
Zing.
After the very messy business with The Tonight Show that led to Jay Leno taking over for Johnny Carson and David Letterman starting his own rival show on CBS, a new war for late-night talk show supremacy began in 1993. Fox wanted its own piece of the action and knew it needed a big name to attach to its show to stand any chance at all at gaining a foothold in that space. Enter the Chevy Chase Show, which debuted in the fall of 1993. Chase might have been a few years past the peak of his star power, but he still hadn't yet hit the mid to late 90s period that saw a series of disappointing films really dull the shine of his career. At the time, one could easily argue that he'd become the biggest name in late night. Of course, the failure of the Chevy Chase Show quickly became the stuff of legend. It lasted just over a month, with a final tally of 29 episodes. The critical consensus was that Chase didn't seem comfortable in the role. The easygoing charisma he was famous for was replaced by awkward, sometimes manic nervousness. It all went so horribly that Fox didn't even attempt another late-night talk show until 2006. After the massive success of The Simpsons, many primetime animated shows tried to compete, and among those failed shows was the single-season sitcom Family Dog. After being one of the breakout episodes of anthology series Amazing Stories, the animated short created by Brad Bird, who would become a Simpsons writer shortly after, was eventually commissioned as a half-hour series by CBS, despite having such a strong foundation to build on. And both Steven Spielberg and Tim Burton as executive producers, the series version of Family Dog fell flat. Reviews were harsh, and Family Dog was moved to a farm upstate before it even got a full season. Ever heard of a TV show failing so badly that it nearly took an entire network down with it? That's what happened with 1979's Supertrain, one of the most expensive flops in TV history. At the time, The Love Boat was a huge hit for ABC, and NBC wanted some of that action. So it took the basic premise of The Love Boat and moved it to a futuristic train. What could go wrong?
Let's go. We got a train to run.
NBC spared no expense in bringing Supertrain to life. The pilot alone cost the network roughly $28.6 million when adjusted for inflation, making it the most expensive TV series ever made up to that point. With that kind of cash being ponied up, the show had to be a massive critical and commercial smash right off the bat, and it was neither. Critics were impressed by the sets, but little else, and ratings were so poor that NBC tried to retool the show several episodes in, while also cutting the main cast in half in an effort to help the audience click more with the characters. None of it worked, and the failure of Supertrain was so expensive that NBC almost went bankrupt as a result, all for a show that most people don't even remember.
Ever wait a while for a movie, only to be let down in a major way? You're not alone. From superhero sequels to long-awaited adaptations, these films were seriously overhyped. It's easy to see why fans were blown away by the trailer for 2016's Suicide Squad that dropped at San Diego Comic-Con. With its haunting music and glimpses of deep-cut characters, the moody teaser whipped superhero fans into a frenzy. Viewers were promised a wild new take on the Joker played by Jared Leto, and while not everyone liked the Joker's grill and tattoos, most were at least a little intrigued to see a new direction for the Clown Prince of Crime. The news that Leto had sent his co-stars disturbing items like a dead pig to remain in character even when he wasn't filming also helped stoke the flames of anticipation. Alas, Suicide Squad ultimately joined the ranks of epic trailers wasted on bad movies. There are too many problems in the film to count, and a lot of them have to do with the fact that its creators couldn't seem to agree on what they were making. Director David Ayer wanted a darker film, more in line with the tone of the Comic-Con trailer, while the studio wanted a more comedic tone. The studio won, compromising the integrity of the movie in the process and causing many fans to keep wondering what might have been. Despite being overhyped in the trailer, the Joker barely appears, but considering how bizarrely Leto plays him, whether or not that's a good thing is up to you.
Listen, you are my gift to this handsome hunka.
Even though the 2013 film The Lone Ranger is notorious for imploding at the box office nowadays, there was actually a time when Hollywood thought it would be a surefire hit. Disney poured $225 million into producing what they seemed certain would be the blockbuster of the summer. And why wouldn't it be? It promised a big screen return for an iconic character, and it rounded up an all-star cast that included Armie Hammer, Johnny Depp, and Helena Bonham Carter. Director Gore Verbinski had previously launched the massively successful Pirates of the Caribbean franchise and made an excellent Western with Rango, so it seemed a safe bet that his new reboot would bring the house down. Technically, it did, but only in the sense that it set back The House of Mouse by almost $200 million. Viewers felt that the movie was way too long, in part thanks to a frame narrative that adds nothing to the story. The film also sparked controversy because it cast Johnny Depp to play Tonto instead of an indigenous actor and leaned heavily into stereotypes about Native Americans.
You are just another white man. Who are you?
Critics accused the film of being bloated and indulgent, insisting that a Western had no need for such an excessive budget. Given how badly The Lone Ranger performed at the box office, they were probably right. In 2018, Disney released a movie adaptation of the classic sci-fi novel A Wrinkle in Time. It had taken more than 50 years for the book to be adapted into a theatrical release, but director Ava DuVernay finally changed that. She had an all-star cast to help, including Oprah Winfrey, Reese Witherspoon, Mindy Kaling, Storm Reed, Chris Pine, and Zach Galifianakis, but no number of celebrities could stop the film from crashing and burning. Despite high hopes, A Wrinkle in Time was a pretty massive disappointment. Viewers felt it relied too much on the spectacle of CGI, which wasn't enough to compensate for the poor writing. Others were bothered by the movie's lack of subtlety. Since the movie simplifies some of the sci-fi concepts explored in the book and removes the religious references, it falls short of the original novel's complexity. Critics gave it a score of 43% on Rotten Tomatoes, and audiences were even less impressed with 26%. Needless to say, A Wrinkle in Time also performed poorly at the box office, where it was dominated by a more popular Disney property, Black Panther. There was a whole lot of hype surrounding Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, even compared to other Marvel movies. It was going to kick off Phase 5 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and introduce fans to the surreal quantum realm. It was also supposed to be a trilogy capper and finale to the story of Ant-Man, while also putting long-awaited villains Kang the Conqueror and MODOK on the big screen for the first time. Was the film a box office success? No, and it was a huge disappointment on other fronts as well. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania managed to surpass Eternals as the lowest-rated movie in the entire MCU. The Quantum Realm was not exactly what fans hoped it would be, less like the colorful worlds of Guardians of the Galaxy and more like the campy assault on the senses from David Lynch's Dune. As it turned out, the much-hyped Kang the Conqueror wasn't all that interesting, and MODOK ended up looking more like a boiled egg than a killing machine.
I don't know what to be. Tell me what to be.
Quantumania was pretty much doomed from the start. Even though it was supposed to be an Ant-Man movie, it was made to be a stepping stone for future MCU projects. Who wouldn't be psyched to see giant cities on wheels? The post-apocalyptic steampunk world of Mortal Engines seemed like it would appeal to fans of Mad Max Fury Road and Howl's Moving Castle, and it was promoted as such. Its marketing campaign also wasted no time in reminding audiences that the script was co-written by none other than Peter Jackson. Universal Pictures was reportedly hoping the movie would kick off a franchise, and like the monstrous moving cities it featured, Mortal Engines seemed too big to fail. It did fail, of course, and many critics believed its size was the main reason it toppled. Fans have argued that the film was too ambitious, trying to cram too many aspects of an expansive world into a single film. The characters and narrative suffered as a result. In retrospect, Mortal Engines had its work cut out for it. The film needed to compete against already established franchises, but with the cast mostly made up of relative unknowns, it couldn't coast on star power. When Mortal Engines went up against superhero movies like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and Aquaman, its engine sputtered, causing this colossus to crash and burn. Even when Last Action Hero was still in its script phase, Hollywood smelled a hit. The premise, an ordinary boy is transported into an action movie, was wildly subversive, but still managed to hit all the classic beats of the genre. The script was so hyped in Hollywood that it launched a bidding war, and Arnold Schwarzenegger loved it so much that he offered to star and executive produce. Adding to the project's lineup of action movie royalty was Lethal Weapon writer Shane Black and Die Hard director John McTiernan. Looking back, screenwriter David Arnott told We Minored in Film, "We really had a chance to make the Wizard of Oz of action movies, the E.T. of action movies." Regardless of what the film could have been, the movie we actually got was pretty underwhelming. Rather than being a smart send-up of action movies, Last Action Hero couldn't seem to decide what genre it was actually supposed to be. The script underwent countless rewrites, with different directors, writers, and studio executives all playing tug-of-war. With so many cooks in the kitchen, the movie soon became a casserole made up of leftover ideas from different versions, from Whiskers the Animated Cat to the Hamlet references. The result was a mess, and once opening weekend arrived, Last Action Hero didn't stand a chance against the second weekend of Jurassic Park.
No sequel for you.
Nothing builds anticipation like a long wait. A superhero crossover film almost 20 years in the making, Glass intrigued audiences who wanted to see the payoff to the stories of David Dunn from Unbreakable and The Horde from Split. When director M. Night Shyamalan announced that he would finally film the conclusion to his East Rail 177 trilogy, social media erupted with excitement. It certainly didn't hurt that audiences seemed pleased with the film in its early screenings. Shyamalan revealed that studio execs had positive responses to a 12-minute clip of the film. Even though Glass was released in January, the notorious dumping ground for movies that are expected to fail, enough fans saw it to make the film profitable. But that didn't mean they were happy with what they saw. To the contrary, Glass is considered one of the worst movies of 2019. Most critics felt that the film's admirable attempts to reinvent the superhero genre fell flat because the story's execution was so clumsy. What's more, the much-hyped trilogy ends with David dying in the most anticlimactic way possible, drowning as he lies face down in a puddle. Certainly, this was an original way to end a superhero movie, but many fans were outraged because the movie's marketing had led them to expect something bigger and better. When Star Wars Episode I: The Phantom Menace hit theaters, it had been 16 years since the last visit to the galaxy far, far away, and fans had been itching to return. Many young millennials felt so excited about the movie because they knew it was meant for their generation, not their parents. Fans purchased tickets weeks in advance and bought the soundtrack on CD. Some were even willing to get up at 3 a.m. to watch the premiere. They needn't have bothered. Unfortunately, The Phantom Menace turned out to be more concerned with its visual effects than its characters. In fact, the movie couldn't even make up its mind who the main character was. Most Star Wars fans couldn't care less about interstellar politics, but that was exactly what Episode 1 gave them right from the opening crawl. The taxation of trade routes was a far cry from the Civil War teased at the beginning of A New Hope. The prequel was bound to invite comparisons to the previous 3 films, but seeing Qui-Gon Jinn as the wise mentor and Jar Jar as the comic relief only made fans miss the original Obi-Wan Kenobi and C-3PO, even though younger versions of both are also in the film.
You are in big doo-doo this time.
Once upon a time, the world believed that Joaquin Phoenix had quit his acting career to become a rapper. The film I'm Still Here claimed to be a documentary capturing his descent into debauchery and mental instability. But in reality, I'm Still Here is a work of fiction, and Phoenix went to great lengths to maintain the illusion that it was a genuine documentary. He remained in character on and off the set for more than a year, even appearing on The Late Show with David Letterman, and his mask never slipped once. Phoenix and director Casey Affleck were coy about it, refusing to officially confirm that the star was in on the joke until the day of the film's release. Despite the hype, the film just wasn't all that good. Some viewers were frustrated that Affleck chose to announce that the film was fake at the final moment, feeling that it would have been better to trust audiences to figure it out for themselves. The film was so over the top that it didn't take a genius to think that it was all too far-fetched to be true. Most critics agreed that once viewers stopped wondering if it's real, I'm Still Here lost its intrigue. With that question already answered before you even begin, there isn't much reason to watch the movie, unless you really want to hear Phoenix lay down some rhymes. Disney hyped the hell out of its so-called live-action remake of The Lion King, placing an emphasis on the groundbreaking technology that allowed the filmmakers to build a virtual reality savannah and place the camera anywhere. With big names like Donald Glover and Beyoncé attached to the project and the promise of James Earl Jones reprising his role as Mufasa, it's easy to see why audiences were so excited. Even as Disney remakes were becoming increasingly commonplace, fans knew right away that if they were going to plunk down $12 to see a rehash of a movie they'd already seen, then this was the one to see. And see it they did. The remake may have earned $1.6 billion, but it's still considered one of the worst movies to reach 10 digits at the box office. Sure, it looked more realistic, but that definitely doesn't mean better. Some of the original's most iconic moments simply don't work when rendered in realistic 3D. The 2019 film needlessly recreated the 1994 movie almost shot for shot, and when it did add new material, it was always pretty pointless.
This looks familiar. Where have I seen this before?
Even viewers who had somehow never seen the 1994 version could tell right away that the new one has no reason to exist other than profit.